Well, let's get the view from Europe of the Labour MEP, Richard Corbett. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I mean, what is going on? We've got Britain laying out its position papers. Now we've got the EU publishing position papers telling us what we've got to do. Is that really appropriate?
Well, the EU has published ahead of the UK very often its position papers on all the issues that are coming up, and it's doing so again. And here, what it's doing is actually gently reminding Britain that it's Britain that has notified the EU of its intention to leave. It's not the EU that has asked Britain to leave. But as Britain has realised that leaving without a deal that preserves some aspects of the benefits of membership, that it makes particular arrangements about this or that, without a deal, we're in deep trouble. It's up to the UK to say what it wants and to put proposals on the table. The onus is on Britain.
And is there, in what is being proposed about the Irish border, an element of the European Union saying, look, we do have skin in this game, Ireland is our member, and we've got to look after our members' interests?
Yes, if Britain leaves the customs union, if we go ahead with Brexit, and if we go ahead with leaving the customs union as well, then unavoidably the Irish border becomes a customs border. It will be the external customs border of the European Union's customs union. How on earth to deal with that without creating barriers, without creating red tape, without creating economic disruption on the whole of the island of Ireland, including Northern Ireland? That's a pretty big problem.
But
it's one caused by Britain.
Well, I understand it's a problem, but at the same time, if the UK, including Northern Ireland, leaves the European Union, if there are consequences for the border because there are different regulations on either side of the border, it's not really for the EU to say it's unacceptable for Britain to make sure that there's a border there, is it? Because we become two separate entities. If there's a border, one side can't say, well, we're just going to demand that you abolish that border.
No, there will have to be an agreement, but the EU is saying in the first instance it's Britain that has to make proposals, because how that works depends on Britain's choices. If Britain goes ahead and leaves the European Union, but stays in the customs union, or not, stays in the single market, or not, those are British decisions. So it will be up to the UK to say, in this eventuality, this is how we would propose to deal with the problem of the Northern Ireland border.
But, I mean, you know, take another issue, wanting special protection so that can't have imitations of Parma ham or feta cheese or Carver. I mean, the whole point is we're separating. So, you know, why should we have protections for these food products when presumably they might not give protection for Cornish clotted cream or something like that within the EU?
Well, such protections are quite common in trade deals, and they work both ways around, because it's exactly the same European legislation that protects Wensleydale cheese, Cornish cottage that you just referred to, Yorkshire forced rhubarb, from imitation elsewhere. It works both ways. And unless this issue is addressed, it's one of many little detailed issues that nobody told us about at the time of the referendum, but they will need to be sorted and settled by the time of British exit from the European Union, assuming we go ahead with it.
And are these matters, do you think, from the EU 27's point of view, are they deal breakers? In other words, if they don't get what they want on Parma ham or on the Irish border, then there won't be a deal, it'll be hard Brexit. Is that how it now looks?
Well, that's difficult to say because there's such a long set of issues, and if there's only one or two where there's no deal, would that upset the whole deal? Who knows? It depends how strongly people feel about it. But don't underestimate political pressures within different EU countries. We've been talking a lot about the political debates and divisions and sometimes confusion within Britain, but imagine if you're a producer of, say, Parma ham in Italy and you've not got that protection, you will probably be putting pressure on the Italian government to be firm. I expect that's true for other products across Europe as well. And maybe conversely in Britain, that producers of our protected products, from Wensleydale cheese to whatever it is, will want that to be in the deal as well. And you can list hundreds of different, very different issues where there will be pressures like that on both sides of the negotiations.
And I noticed that you did use, if Britain leaves the European Union, seeing it as a hypothetical. I mean, do you think it is a hypothetical, or that it might not happen?
Well, all I'm saying is to point out that until it actually happens, Britain can change its mind if it wants to. That's a British decision.
And do you think that's a realistic possibility?
Well, who knows? I mean, I see that chaos and confusion surrounds this whole process. And if you think about it from the point of view of somebody who voted to leave, very few Leave voters voted for Brexit at any cost. They were told it won't cost money, it will save money, and it can all go to the NHS. Now that it's becoming increasingly apparent that this will be a costly exercise for our economy, a damaging exercise, those voters are entitled to say, hang on a minute, that's not what I was told, that's not what I voted for. So who knows, there may be reconsideration. Once we see that final deal, the divorce agreement, when it comes back for a meaningful vote in the British Parliament, the British Parliament is entitled, should it so wish, to say, now we see what this really means, rather than the nice stories told at the time of the referendum. Now we see what it actually entails. Maybe we should step back from the brink.
OK, Richard Corbett, thank you very much indeed from that view from the European Parliament.